What's up guys, so here is a discussion slash talk on the latest chapter of Toriko the manga, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, spoiler alert warning, so I'm assuming you've read this or you don't mind it being spoiled. So this chapter was much more of a setup chapter. I mean, roughly 10 pages were simply just setups, like you pretty much know the general layout. I mean, all the Zero Biotope members have been stationed at their spots in order to sort of defend and fight the respective Bishokukai members. So it is a very simple chapter on the sort of the outer layer. So but there are some things I do want to talk about. I really first off really commend the author. I really wanted to actually see the fight between Ichiryu and Midora, and it almost seemed like he definitely could have just skipped the entire thing and just continued with the Meteor Spice thing as we saw at the end of the last chapter. However, he did this sort of rewind thing, which is actually fairly common in a few manga, including Bleach, where you see like that narrator sort of panel, and it says something always along the lines of let's rewind time a bit and go back. And whenever I hear that exact phrase, which is not often, but whenever I hear it, it's always very high quality manga. And I guess the reason is because for that phrase to come about in that situation, you really need a very good plot story, and some manga, I'm not gonna lie, just have very generic stories. And then there are other mangas who do actually implement this, but it's still a very generic story. But this one, I just felt it was very, very good. The plot's complex enough, but not too complex. I do feel like we could use a little bit more actual complexity in the plot, but I'm not complaining here. And so, yes, we do get to see the final Ichiryu and Midora fight. I feel like what's going to happen is it's going to be on the shallow level. So what that means is we aren't going to get the meat of the fight as we saw in the entire sort of Coliseum Cooking Fest arc. I believe it's going to be a sort of shallow sort of fight, because we've had like 50 to 100 chapters, okay, maybe not that much, 25 to 50 chapters of straight up fighting already. And I guess unless they can do something very unique and different, it's just going to be more characters with more abilities, and it's all like, I've seen it before, nothing great. Okay, cool, you have this ability, oh well, whatever. And it's like same sort of stuff. So I'm assuming, and I would very much like this, just like sort of a skim through of the whole fight with all the Bishokukai members, and so it's not as great. And so that brings us to the next point, which is that the Bishokukai members, I predicted this. It does definitely seem like this Ichiryu devoted most of his forces to be stationed here, and a lot of people just failed to realize that the reason was because there was going to be this huge fight. And I slightly underestimated the amount of Bishokukai, because it seemed like a lot showed up for the Cooking Fest, and so I thought, like, I believe the percentages I predicted were like 40 and 60%. 40% to the Cooking Fest, 60% to the Gourmet World. And looking at stuff now, it seems like based on fighting power levels, I would say like it's like 80%, and then 20% to the Cooking Fest. And so regardless, we see here these, like, all these ridiculous people, and I was planning on just listing each of them out, and then listing out who they're fighting, and then like which full course menu item they are pretty much fighting over. but then I realized that I would pretty much be repeating what you just read on the 10 pages, and so let's just save ourselves 10 minutes of that. And yeah, I just have to say though, it's very amazing. One thing I do have to mention is that the Bishokukai members, I mean, the titles of them, I mean, apparently there's executive head chef, and then there's executive head chef, and I believe then there's like a tier right under that, which was like president head chef, and then under that is like all the head chefs. And so obviously these are all the people who are actually in alliance with the Bishokukai members, and then those under the head chefs are probably like the chefs that were enslaved and not intentionally like in control. And so I guess that is a hierarchy, and if that is the case, then that pretty much tells the power levels of the 0th Biotope members. And so chronologically, as the pages go on, it likens to how the people we see later may just be weaker because they're versus the head chefs rather than the executive head chef. And it's very interesting, and we do get a lot of sort of banter back and forth between all of these groups, and I think it's very interesting because all of them are very cocky. Like one person, like all of them are pretty much saying like I'm surprised only you showed up. I'm going to own you easily. And then the respective enemy replies in similar kind. Wow, I can't believe only you showed up. This is going to be easy. And each sort of exchange with each location is of similar respect. All of them seem to be hella cocky, and like every speech dialogue is pretty much something like this. I mean, I believe the exchange with the butler, and again, I don't know how to classify the butler in terms of hierarchy, but I guess the butler, I think his name's Alfaro, I would actually classify him as possibly higher than the executive head chef because he is the aide, he's the butler to Midora himself. But yeah, like first off, you got those two people from the 0th Biotope division saying something like, hey, let's see how many of the Bishokukai we can kill. Let's make it a contest. And then it's obviously very cocky, right? And then Alfaro comes in and he's like, sorry, but both of your scores are going to be zero kills. And he's pretty much saying, yeah, I'm going to kill you before you can kill anyone. And so it's very, very cocky, and Zebra would pretty much be like, he would just be unconscious from the amount of cockiness or in such a rage. But at the same time, at this point, we know that Zebra he's not even close to competition with even the weakest member of any of these groups. I mean, we know that for a fact just based on power level sort of milestones or sort of power level markers in the past. We know that Toriko, who was on a similar level as Zebra at the time, maybe slightly weaker, Toriko he just went into the gourmet world and he could not handle it. I mean, he was having trouble breathing. He couldn't even just stay there for like under like 2 minutes without pretty much dying. And so yeah, all these people, they're all in the gourmet world, and yeah, they're fine. And so Zebra, even now with his power boost, with his 4 beast, after the 4 beast arc power boost, I wouldn't consider him even close to any of these people that are currently in the gourmet world. And further proof is just in the fact that where he is right now. I mean, Tepai, the grandson of Jiro, restrained him with 1 seed. He throws 1 seed into the ground, boom. Zebra is just like, he's been wrapped up for like the last 5 chapters, just, you know, wrapped up in this plant seed thing with his mouth covered, just like grimacing and like scowling at people because all we can see are his eyes. And so even in the, I mean, even in the Colosseum, he's nowhere near the strongest. I mean, if he was, he wouldn't have been so preoccupied with the nitro and stuff like that. And I mean, people might reason, oh yeah, Zebra was doing work, he wasn't losing at all, he was demolishing people. It was just that there's so many enemies, he was preoccupied. Well, first off, is Tepai owned him in one shot. Second off, if he was really that strong, he would have just wiped them all out, or gone to help Setsuno. Or if he was really that strong, he would have wiped out Joa in one hit. Or if he was really that strong, he would have been able to do something like this meteor shower, or what's it called, meteor spikes, which again we see from the first panel. It's pretty much like a sort of spice, which I guess is a seasoning that rains down upon the earth like meteors and destroys everything in its wake. And so there's been discussion that the meteor shower, the meteor spice that was apparently launched by Midora is so large that it is pretty much destroying the entire human world and killing millions of lives. And my question is, if it's so powerful, how is Midora able to use that technique after his big fight with Ichiryu? I mean, from what it seems like Ichiryu's dead. And so for him to be able to use that, I guess what people are saying is that he beat Midora, I mean he beat Ichiryu, then fully recovered by eating one of the 4-course menu items, and possibly got a higher power boost. And so that would make sense, because why, if he had such power, then Ichiryu would have been a piece of cake. So it's safe to possibly assume he developed this sort of meteor spice ability after leveling up his gourmet cells, possibly discovering monster cells, or he probably already had monster cells, but discovering monster cells after eating the 4-course menu item, which is just to show you the insanity of this power level. And so that leads to two generic sort of questions on the broad whole general story of Toriko to begin with. First off, we have the end panel, which is pretty much Midora, and he's riding this like octopus cat, which makes sense because last chapter he was referenced by his nickname, which was like something cat, and yeah, he looks like a beast. The one thing I really like about him and Starjin is the hair. Like it's almost like flowing out, and I believe it just has to do with the high power level of their gourmet cells, which is just amazing. And so yeah, Toriko, great manga. Which leads to my second point for the generic story as a whole. First off, Ichiryu is called Old Man by Midora, which is pretty funny because apparently all three were disciples. Ichiryu is still younger than Jiro, from what I can see, and yet Midora is obviously the youngest, but seemingly stronger. And I guess it's because he's using illegal means to obtain ingredients as well. So anyhow, moving on from that, the whole thing I wanted to talk about was this: why are they fighting over this stuff? I mean, Akatia made it clear, because he chose not to tell any of his three disciples anything about the 4-course menu items. And so for them to be fighting over this, it just doesn't make sense. It seems to be against the will of Akatia. And so, I mean, again, I mentioned this before in my last video, but Jiro is the only one doing it proper. He is the only one honoring Akatia's will, which is, you know, I didn't tell any of my disciples about any of the 4-course menu items on purpose. I don't want you to get involved. And yet Akatia also seemed to predict that this war was going to take place due to the food items that he did say. And so why are they fighting over this? Well, obviously the answer seems to be that they want to eat it. Why do they want to eat it? Possibly just to obtain and level up their their gourmet cells, or just taste how great they were. And it's very important to note that first off, these ingredients were made in a gourmet world, and although they might level up tremendously your gourmet cells, these were made for like the leaders of the human world to stop the war, and so they are very, very good tasting, but that doesn't mean that it will level up just human cells. Like, you have to have gourmet cells to level up. And so that leads to my other point, which is that these ingredients, like, despite them being like so heavenly and like almost like the thing that everyone has been like chasing after for like hundreds of chapters now, the fact of the matter is that these are simply ingredients that have been specially prepared by a chef. Regardless of the caliber of the chef, sure, this is the god of all chefs, along with Akatia, who we would consider more like the god of all gourmet hunters, but at the end of the day, that is just a relative term. He is good, so good, the best, in comparison to other chefs. At the end of the day, he is human, and these are just ingredients to food. So regardless of how specially they're prepared, what I feel like is Akatia lived a very short life, potentially. You know, a typical human average life is still very short. And so what I feel like is, regardless of how strong he is, maybe he just got to the sort of outskirts, the beginning of the gourmet world, and developed his full-course menu. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a human. Akatia is a human. He's human, and so it's his full-course menu, just as how Ichiryu made his own full-course menu, etc., etc. And so it's just his full-course menu. It is the best caliber full-course menu of the Toriko human species, but that could still just mean he made it at the outskirts of the gourmet world, which means that there may be billions of other ingredients deep inside the gourmet world, which we know of to be thousands of times bigger than the human world, that would make the Akatia's full course menu pale in comparison. And if that is the case, then the potential of Toriko, I mean, if they ever really get to outer space or like beyond planets, interplanetary, I doubt it, but that could mean that, I mean, the potential for power levels of Toriko are huge, because already, just from eating one item of the full course menu, they are already like doing meteor spice and blowing up nations. And so it definitely has the potential to go on to power levels rivaling those of the end of Dragon Ball Z. And again, I don't want to mention Dragon Ball GT because it's non-canon, but there you have it. Yeah. And so my final point is that what is Ichiryu and Midora doing? They're going against the will. They're being very greedy, like it or not. They've gathered all the strongest people in the entire human world to duke it out, fight, slaughter each other, and obviously the battles are going to be epic, but all over this sort of greed. And at the end of the day, it's greed, it's selfishness. They want to eat these food items, and no matter how you reason it, the zeroth biotope, I don't view them anymore as the good guys. I mean, they are being just as selfish. And I guess people are going to say, oh, they're only getting these items to protect the human race and to prevent the Bishokukai from leveling up and posing an even greater threat to the human world. That may or may not be true, but the thing is, if that really was the case, you could, I mean, Ichiryu, you knew where Midora's headquarters were. You could have just went there with your Zero Biotope, had an all-out fight to stop them without having to do all this stuff where it's very clear you are going out there and looking for this ingredients yourself. I mean, you even prepared a 3-year-long milk knife, the best milk knife ever, to get the salad for Akatia's full-course menu. Like, it's very clear, Ichiryu, that you are very selfish and going out and trying to get these ingredients. If you truly wanted to sort of be the good guy and prevent the Bishokukai from leveling up their cells and posing an even greater dark threat, then you could have just stopped them early on. You didn't have to go out of your way to Gourmet World and start prepping to prepare this salad. Regardless, the Akatia full course menu items, they just make me sort of drool. They sound very good, which is very bad because I'm trying to keep it healthy. I'm starting to develop a bit of a gut here, and I haven't been exercising well, and my metabolism has dropped since I was a youth where I could eat anything and get away with it. But yeah, I mean, Adam just sounds like amazing. Just the name itself, on top of it being a beverage, Adam, Katia, God, it just sounds like just from the name, it sounds like the best soda ever, even better than the cola thing, which I just got so thirsty throughout that whole cola arc. But that's a story for another time. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, leave in your comment your opinions on the chapter, and as well leave in a comment if you actually watch 22 minutes. I very appreciate that. I'll see you guys later.